Hello, everybody. This is Paul Tinkle, and this is 30 Minutes. Our guest today is Mr. Jeff Cupples. He is the superintendent of the Weakley County School System, and we're talking about Wegrow Academy.
Yeah, as always, Paul, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk a little bit about our school system and what we got going on. And definitely, child care has been a hot topic over the last year, and we're glad to get to a point where we can move forward.
Tell me, Mr. Cupples, and I want to get into this a little bit deeper. Whose idea was it to bring child care into the Weakley County school system?
Well, I tell you, I guess the idea is necessity, right? I mean, we're doing it out of a need, but I guess I would go back in history and say the beginning of the journey was probably the first planning session that I had with the school board early on, and I remember, roughly 3 years ago now, bringing that up, that would be something we need to look forward to as far as recruiting and retaining quality teaching staff and faculties at our school. So it's longer than a year, but now we've deeply been doing the work, trying to figure out if there's a way forward for us as a school system and what that would look like within, budgetary restraints and that kind of thing over the last year. But I'd say it's probably an idea that's been on the table for close to 3 years now.
This is not unnecessary in some cases, but in some cases it's very necessary because you may lose teachers because they can't find local taking care of children.
Well, yeah, and that's not theoretical. That has actually happened. Just in the last couple of months, we've lost 4 teachers. We're hoping to be able to go back to the table with them and say, hey, we've got some help coming. Of course, all that depends on their individual situation, but yeah, it's, and it's not just a Weakley County problem either, Paul. It's statewide. But I'd never come across a term until just recently, but there is a phrase called child care desert. And, that is an area.
Child care desert, you said?
Yep. That's when I think technically, according to the state, if you have a shortage of over 250 seats, you're in a desert. And I think those numbers change depending on what you're looking at as far as what reference point. But in our case, we started down thinking, this is trying to stabilize our workforce, right? And then as we got into it, we realized there was such a need in the county that any seats we could provide definitely helps that overall situation.
You use the word seats. What does that mean?
Well, by seat, just places, placements available for students. In other words, another way of looking at it is just when we say seats, we're talking about a capacity. So, right now the square footage, once the remodeling is done, because one thing I've shared with our school board and our county commission and anybody who's been around this, when you get outside of just your family helping take care of your children, when you kind of farm that out and you pay somebody, obviously the restrictions are very thorough. And so you got square footage requirements. You've got obviously ratios as far as adults to children. So trying to figure out what our capacity is has been a little bit, not a chore, but just something we've had to pay a lot of attention to. So once the remodeling is done, we'll look at that number. But our seats right now are looking to be, around 65. And then once, depending on final storage and things like that, once we get a square footage count from TDOE, which is who will be our licensing authority, we'll be able to have the total number of seats, AKA child capacity.
Well, let me step back just a little bit here on this. This area, can you describe what it is that you have been working with this building here for a long time, and you've also got a principal over there. So let me step back here a little bit on.
Yeah, obviously building from the ground up, that gets even more expensive. And one thing we are blessed with, we do have some land and ground within the school system, but trying to be cost effective to move quickly before we lost any more teachers to this need. We actually looked over at the Professional Learning Center. I've called it several things, PDC, ALS, you name it. But basically, for those who've been around for a while, it's the old vocational center. And right now that building is a jack of all trades. We got remodeled several years ago, and it's a nice building. And we house several things there as far as programs. This particular program will go on the east side of the building. And so we'll remodel that and get that, get the FF&E or furniture and fixtures and equipment and all that to spec for the age groups. And then we'll get the decor in there, and hopefully we'll get the facility that'll be top notch and up to our standards. But that east side of the building is what we'll remodel, and we're looking at roughly usable space. I think the total will be about 5,500 square feet. But by the time you take the actual area that we can account for, probably be more like 4,500 square feet.
I may have danced around just a little bit, but what I think we need to remind people that this building is located in Dresden, Tennessee. It's off of Highway 22. It's been very, very useful through the years. I can tell you COVID was a part of it, and then you had the tornado in Dresden, and it's been
operated as a FEMA center. Yeah, it's had multiple roles, and our district's technology is housed there. Coordinate school health. We have adult education that goes on the west side of the building. We've got a nursing program.
And a shop program as well.
Yeah, we've got a welding program that's in one of the old vocational bays. And so it has been, I think you said useful. It has been a very useful, what I call a jack of all trades. And we'll reconfigure the building a little bit to make it more efficient and as far as flow for this. But again, Miss Crystal Smith is the principal administrator over that building. And so she's excited to get the program too, and what that's going to be able to do for our teachers.
If you just joined us, we have the superintendent of Weakley County Schools, Jeff Cupples. And in our conversation here today, we're probably going to ask a couple of questions that are a little bit on a sidebar. But I'd like to know when, let's assume you'll be up and running when.
Well, right now, our phase is our architect is looking at getting the plans drawn up, and they'll have to go out for review for the fire marshal office, and that's the first step. Once we get that, we'll go out for bid. But ultimately, our goal would be, sometime after fall break. So I think if you look on the back end of that week, basically by November 1, that's pretty tight. But depending on how quickly the paperwork moves forward.
I'm probably going to hit you with a couple of questions that I don't know the answers to, but
Sure.
I know you know some of this. Who is the person that's going to oversee that? Will that be the principal you just mentioned, or will it be the person that's overseeing how many men and women would be in that world? Well,
based on our projections right now, and again, when I say projections, it means we've modeled all this out, several different scenarios. And then obviously as we get closer to time, we'll have those real numbers come in. But right now, again, we're looking at approximately 62 seats, and based on hours of operation, because we want to make sure we're early enough where teachers don't have to necessarily rush to get back, late enough so that if they've got faculty meetings, things going on after school, they don't have to rush to get over there. So when you factor all that in, and then we streamline that, overlap some hours, we're looking at about 10.25, I think, full-time equivalent positions. So roughly 10 people plus, to your question, who's going to be over it? Well, we'll open up and we'll interview for a director. The statutes on that, we have to have a director that will oversee a lot of the managerial, operational day-to-day.
Have you got that person yet?
No. Like I said, this just got passed through our board, and finances got moved over through the county commission. And so that's something that we'll do as we go into summertime, and we'll get the job descriptions. I mean, we've got drafts, but of course, now that it's really going to happen, we'll accelerate all that, and we'll do a round of interviews and get the right person.
If it's county money, I'm going to ask you this. I know it's not popular, but why can't we do other children who, are not associated with education? But my sister goes in school, and it's right there next. But you're going to get calls and ask why.
Well, sure. And I think that's a fair question. And so when you look at your school budget, right, it's funded through three buckets. You got a 141 general purpose bucket, which is what this factors into. And then your 142 and 143 buckets are both your federal money and your nutritional funds that run your cafeteria. So when you go back to 141, Funding wise, I think the latest number when I broke it down, 21% of those dollars are local dollars, and then the rest are still some form of federal, but the vast majority is state money, right? So funding wise, our school system is basically on a 75-25 split, and we'll know if that holds true, Paul. We've got another update coming out at the end of the month, and they're supposed to be adjusting those fiscal capacities. But if all that holds the same, and you look at that number, anytime we get to the end of a budget year and we have any kind of revenue left over, that goes into our fund balance. And so that's a mixture of dollars. And a big part of this money, as far as those people are like, well, how's it being funded, is grant money. About $250,000 of it is going to come from the ISM grant. And that's something we're really excited about because it's going to give us another opportunity. For once it's open, it will also serve as a work-based learning site for our high school students to get out of the regular classroom and be on site. Now, they won't count as workers, but they'll get some experience there, hoping to grow more child care providers as well as future teachers is what we're really hoping. So there's a mix of state and local dollars that will go into that, and we're moving that money out of our fund balance. And for somebody who doesn't follow that, that's essentially we're moving it out of our savings account to be able to do the remodel. And then as far as the way we're approaching it is it's a service we're providing. It's a benefit, just like whether it be 401k or paid holidays, whatever it is, to maintain our workforce.
Let me jump in here because people may not have heard enough about it, but did all of your school board members say yes?
Yes, sir. It was a unanimous
vote. Did all of the county commission members, did they say yes?
Final commission was 13-3. So we had
an overwhelming number.
So we're
Finance, Ways and Means. You got through that.
We did. That was a little closer. That was a 5-4 vote. Then we were unanimous in HEED, which is the first committee that our education system falls to, which is Health, Education, Economic Development. And this is and that committee is interesting too, because when you talk about child care, you're talking about economic development.
What the governor has done in this past year is saying that raises are coming or have come.
Correct.
And with that, you have enough teachers that are looking at that number and to say, okay, that came at a good time because I've got a baby, I've got 3 babies, and they're all under the age of what? Can they be there?
Well, what we're looking at is we're going to start with infants, which will be 6 weeks. And right now, based on the last survey that we did with our teachers, is that's one of our highest areas of need. But we'll start with infants, and then we'll go all the way up until where they're pre-K age, and hopefully they'll get out and go to pre-K, but potentially up to age 5, until they start school.
Do you see any men working in that area?
Well, sure. Like I said, we don't discriminate either way. So if somebody wants to
apply for that
job, and they'll have an equal opportunity to get in there. And obviously that's not an area where you see as many, but definitely would be great. And if there's anything I've learned in education right now is we need some strong male role models out there for our children of all ages.
Mm-hmm. So we were talking about 6 weeks, and then, and I guess I need to ask the other questions. And so you have children there. What if the school system closes its door because bad weather? Now, what happens then?
Yep, another good question. As we've talked through different scenarios among our leadership staff, and 2 very important people on that has been Miss Angie Rushing and Karen Fowler, who are very knowledgeable in this area. But as our whole team has looked at this, one thing we've started out with, Paul, the model was roughly 38 weeks, and that it would only be open basically during the school year. And then we would not be open in the summer. And then as we've interviewed and we've looked at, because one thing we definitely want to make sure we're doing here is we want to keep the capacity full.
Well, not only that, your staff, and I'm looking at it from the other side. So if you have good staff and then they don't have a job during that period of time, they go to work somewhere else.
Well, possibly, but now that would operate just like our our EAs. They're paid over 12 months. It's not like they go unpaid during that time. But that was the first model we looked at. And then again, like we get back in January, February, and we get another winter storm Fern that, puts ice on the roads for 2 weeks, then it would not be open. And so, but as we've kind of evolved the thinking on it, one thing we've looked at is potentially being open at limited capacity in the summer, and then also just being year round. And that depends on, who's making up all those seats as far as capacity. If eventually our board will weigh in on this, and we'll create our procedures and our policies. But let's say we get down and we have 5 spaces open, Paul, and nobody in our school system needs it. Then obviously we want to, because again, what we're hoping to do with this is we're adding 62 potential seats to the need in the county. And so if we were to open that up, then that would be one opportunity where we got to go look. We got to look at summer and those off days. But right now, we're anxious to see what our real numbers are. But as far as that person, as far as operation, we want to make sure we're meeting our teachers first. That's mission priority because we're trying to keep our workforce steady.
You brought up a good subject about timing. And so when school is closed, I don't want to use the word babysitter closed, but what is it that, it'll turn into something that people will call it.
Yeah. Well, right now we're calling it We Grow Academy.
I was waiting for you.
Yeah. And, and that's just, one of our core values is growth. I noticed while I was out here waiting for us to have opportunity to get started, I noticed in your mission statement the word growth. And so, our whole thing is get better every day, and we want to help grow. And obviously in this case, we're trying to help these families be able to work and, and be able to get in.
I don't think we've actually told the audience, and maybe some of the people are still not real understanding on all of this, but this is all about making sure that people don't have to leave because they don't have health care for their children or babysitting. You can call it whatever you want to, but it's taking care of children. And eventually what is going to happen, those young ones hopefully will move into Weakley County schools.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, this is a benefit. I know there's been several questions on a lot of different topics about this, but
such as jump into that. So what are those questions?
Well, like for example, why are we as a school system opening a child care? Well, if you've not really studied that, it's a common thing now. Now, I would say 3 years ago, we would have been a little bit more tip of the spear when we put the idea out there, but we weren't ready yet. But when you go back just in the fall, like for example, I know Obion County is going to open one up. I believe that one will be located in Troy, but don't hold me to that. Of course, Union City's had one for a while now. Paris City, special school district has had one. Henry's had one. But I know Dyersburg is going to be opening one up in the fall as well. And as you move across the state, these are not uncommon because everybody's facing the same problems we are. So we're trying to get to that point where we offer another benefit. Now, going back to what questions, when we say benefit, that does not mean that obviously we're paying for that. It is tuition based, which means our teachers will have to pay for that. So that's important that I think got misconstrued on the front end when we started talking about this. We're not providing the benefit. We are spending the money to get a building ready or get part of a building ready, but we're obviously not going to be doing it at no cost. So what we're basically trying to do is guarantee the seats so that our teachers can continue to work.
Who's going to pay for the food for the children? Great
question. All that will be provided through our nutrition service. So those meals will get turned in. Will actually help our nutrition service. So they will be brought in. And again, we anticipate some of our families bringing their own meals just like we did, but ultimately we will be providing meals, but they will be brought in.
You're probably going to get these questions if you haven't already had them,
Sure.
But what about small children? You mentioned 6 weeks. Kids get sick. What happens there?
Well, your state's got a lot of protocols and through TDOE. And so we'll continue to, we'll follow those as far as, again, I'm just thinking back when my own children were in a child care provider. If somebody got sick, they notified us and we'll do the same thing. I mean, we're good at taking care of children. We got 4,000 already in our school system. So we're excited about adding, another 60, particularly in an area of need that we've got, both as a school system, as a county. But to your question, I mean, if there's a state protocol on that, we'll follow that. Obviously custodial care, sanitation, all that we've thought through. And one thing with infants, we're excited about one of the programs that we're already using with our after school program. And for those families out there that are familiar with our after school program, they can really relate to this. This will operate very similar to that, where it'll be, revenue neutral. Tuition covers your cost of running it. That way it's not an added cost to our 141 budget. But that particular software program is going to allow us to keep, just like an app, we live in an app-based society. So our families will be able to be connected consistently through an app that they'll have with the We Grow Academy.
If you've just joined us, we're talking about something very special, and this is the director of Weakley County Schools, Jeff Cupples. So do you think there will be more people in Dresden using the services, or will it be more from Gleason? Because if you go from south of Greenfield, and you already know all of this,
right?
But you got to tell about it. So
Sure.
You got somebody from the deep end of Greenfield, and then you've got somebody on the other side of Martin, and then got to go all to Dresden and back to Martin for their job, going back to pick up the kids and then take them back home. And there's a lot of questions, how much is this going to cost in the subject of, gasoline for that mother or father?
Sure. Well, every family's got to make the decision that fits their family, right? All we're trying to do is provide that opportunity because right now they don't have any. And so when you look at, go ahead, Paul.
I just thought when you said that, I think what you all meant to piggyback on is this is keeping teachers.
Yeah. It goes back to mission priority is we're trying to maintain our workforce, because the best thing we can do for Education Weakley County is to put the most effective teacher possible in the classroom. And that means keeping the ones we have, because we have a great group of teachers at all campuses. But it also means being able to recruit open slots, right? And so from an interview perspective, if you're interviewing for our jobs, well, everybody's got the same raise law that we've got. And then, we're behind a little bit with some of our neighbors. And so from that standpoint, if you're looking at that, this is a great opportunity for us. If you need childcare, we can say we can get that seat for you. But going back to your question about, geography and distance, and, every family have to look at that. And that's why we're educators. So we love statistics, right? We love data. So we took a survey, and our first need across our school district was about 80 something seats needed. And then as we started exploring, well, how could we meet that need? Ultimately, it come down to, cost effectiveness. We couldn't obviously put one in every community. So it's not a question of 4 or 5. It's a question of 1 or none, right? And so with that, the best place for one would be centrally located, which put it in Dresden. Well, just so happened we had a building that had square footage available. And so that's kind of how we got to this point. But I think, Paul, when you consider there's a waiting list of 1 to 2 years on just about all of our child care providers, because a lot of times I've had some people say, well, somebody's not going to drive. Well, maybe they won't. And that's definitely, we hope they can get something else closer to home.
Well, there's a possibility they might move to Dresden if you're living outside of Dresden.
They may, but just like at our full commission meeting, we had one parent testify they were having to go to Fulton, Kentucky to get child care. And so people do what you have to do. So we're just trying to take a little bit of that pressure off. And the reality is, we're blessed with those 4-lane roads. So you got a 65 mile per hour zone connecting, for the most part, our communities to some degree. So you got roughly a 15-minute drive on average. But if you're out there on the outskirts, and if it doesn't fit, then by all means don't do it. I just, and I hope that our teachers and families can find somewhere closer to home. But if they don't, we're going to have a spot for them.
You've used the word teacher all through our conversation.
Sure.
What's the definition of a parent? That they have to be, maybe it's a custodian or maybe a cafeteria person.
Good question.
Are these people allowed to have?
So it'll be, again, earlier in the conversation, I also mentioned our school board. It'll be in the summertime, but they'll look at that policy and they'll set those procedures as far as like a decision tree that you're referencing as to who gets a seat, so to speak. But we've said from the get-go, our top priority is make sure we've got certified teachers, that we have their seats available if they need one. And not all of them are going to move. Our numbers, that 80 number I mentioned earlier, that, that's gone down to about 40 something, right? So their conditions have changed. Maybe they got in at another sitter or child care provider during the day that could handle. Maybe they had somebody in their family come available that can do it. So everybody's conditions have changed. And some said, I don't want to make that drive. But condition one will be for us to make sure our teachers have a spot, and then we'll branch out from there.
If you just joined us, we're talking with the superintendent of Weakley County Schools. It's Jeff Cupples, and we're having the conversation. And who came up with the name?
We Grow Academy, and I'm trying to think back. I think that was just a collaborative effort. I'm sure, Miss Karen and Miss Angie, and myself, and everybody else. I'd hate to tell you that, Paul, because we've had that name kind of floating around for a while, but I don't know who threw that on the idea board and it stuck. But We Grow Academy. We as in Weakley. It's a collaborative effort between us and our parents, and then grow, because that's ultimately the goal we want to do, and make sure they're ready to move on in their education journey.
Yeah, and I know we only have a short period of time here, but what do you see the goal 3 years out, 5 years out? And when I say those, we got this running perfectly like we want it to be. And you never know when you're going to have children. And it usually kind of shows up in times where, hey, what are we going to do about childcare?
Right.
And it's hard to find those people. And that's not any doubt about
it.
And
that's the tough part, that, listen to some of those testimonies. We've got parents and families in our county that are calling to get on child care waiting lists before they even know if they're, been blessed and pregnant or not. Because that's just, they know how hard that is to get a spot. And so for all of our child care providers that are in the county, hats off to you, because what you do is vital to our county. And our goal is not to compete, but during a shortage, simply provide those seats. And so, you're right. So that's something we'll obviously, just like with maternity leave, that was a big thing that our state has done for our teachers. They have to communicate that to us, obviously, so we can try to fill the vacancy in the room while they're on maternity leave or paternity leave. But I'm sure, we'll just ask for communication to keep keep those seats available.
I would follow this up by asking the question, if I had 3 children under the age of school, is that 3 that can come in?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. One thing that we've not set for sure now, some of the numbers that we've put out there as we've done our projections is for infants, 150 a week, and then 135 for the other age groups. But, one thing we've talked about is if somebody were to have siblings, getting a discount there and trying, again, we're nonprofit, we're the school system. So
it's $30 a day. Yeah. And then it comes down a little bit.
Yep. And that was the number for us to get to the point to where obviously it run itself and still maintain enough profit to pay for training and consumables and those kind of things. But then also we want to make sure I don't think we're too far off from, it's expensive. I'll be honest with you. As somebody who's had to pay for it, I joke, but I'm also very serious. One of the best raises I ever got was when my kids started kindergarten. Real money in my pocket is not having to pay for childcare. So, but it's something that we've all had to kind of go through, and we're just trying to help the process.
Mr. Cupples, I'm glad we had a chance to come in, particularly during this time of the year where we're out on spring break, and this gives us a little bit of understanding about what we've been wanting to talk about. And I sure appreciate what you've done and the team that you have. So We Grow Academy, it will be opening this fall, and contact the Weakley County School System if you have other questions. For Mr. Cupples, Paul Tinkle, thanks for listening, everybody, on 30 Minutes.
You've been listening to 30 Minutes, a community affairs program on Thunderbolt Radio. You can listen to this broadcast and others anytime by visiting thunderboltradio.com and following the Thunderbolt Radio and Digital YouTube page. Thanks for listening.